guys! Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to 25 days of YouTube. Today I'm coming at you with the list of books that I read during 2018. At the beginning of the year I gave you guys the list of books that I was wanting to read, and I read through a good portion of them, but not all of them. My goal was to read 24 books this year, and at the time of filming this video I have done 23, and I am still in the middle of 2 other books. So potentially I could have done like 25 before the year is up, depending on when I finish those. But I think I will definitely hit my 24, and that's all that matters, and that feels awesome. So I absolutely adore reading, which is why I wanted to kind of give myself this goal so that I could focus on reading and like just give myself that downtime to just chill out and read a book, because it feels great. So anyway, let's get into my list of books here. The first book I read this year was The Great Santa Search by Jeff Guinn. This is the third book in a trilogy. I mentioned that in my first video, so I figured I'd mention it again. But this wasn't my favorite book by him. Like, it was still cute and it was still good, and I still enjoyed reading it for like the beginning of the year, right after Christmas. But of the 3 books, it wasn't my favorite. But if you're going to get the set, I would definitely suggest just going ahead and getting all 3 of them, because if nothing else, they look cute on your shelf altogether. The second book I read was The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and I absolutely adored this book. I don't know why it took me so long to read it. Honestly, my friends had been telling me for like years and years and years that I needed to read this book because it was just cute and it was good and blah 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 blah. I don't know if cute's the right word. I mean, it was cute, but it's a little intense in some parts too. Anyway, I also watched the movie and that was also really good. So if you've not checked out that book, definitely recommend it. You should totally go check out that book. The next book that I read was The 4 Agreements, and that was one of those books that I just fell in love with as well. Obviously it's not like a fiction storybook, it is just more of like a spiritual guide book. Not really a self-help book, but yeah, I'd call it a spiritual guide. And I've learned this year that I really enjoy reading books that are like spiritually awakening. They like speak to your soul in a certain way, and I don't know, it feeds that little like hippie part of my heart, I guess you can call it, and it just makes me feel good inside, and it makes me feel like everything's gonna be okay in the world. So I would definitely suggest picking up that book, because it teaches you good life lessons, and if that's something that you are into reading, you should totally read it. And everyone has their different, I don't know, likes and dislikes when it comes to certain types of books, and I try to keep a pretty vast variety in what I read, but a lot of what I do read is kind of like more practical stuff, I guess. Right, the next book that I read this year was not on my initial reading list, but it was John Wayne, The Genuine Article, and I just kind of love John Wayne. That's like one of my little secrets that I don't generally tell people, is that like I really enjoy like John Wayne movies, and just like I think he was a really cool person, and he was just like a good soul, and it was cool to like read this book and see what he did in his life and what people thought of him. And it was just, I don't know, it's cool to read about people that were genuinely good people and just came from a rough background. So if you're interested in John Wayne, or just interested in good people, check it out. Alright, so my next 3 books are all a part of a series. There's actually a 4th book in the series that I just haven't been able to find yet, but these 3 were given to me by a friend. She got them from the library, and she was just like, hey, I think you would like these books. And she was right. I read them in like 3 days. Like, she brought them to me on my last day of work for the week, and I brought them back to her like 3 days later on my Monday. And I was just like, yep, here you go. But it is Darkness Becomes Her, A Beautiful Evil, and The Wicked Within, and they are by Keaton. And it's just a really great storyline if you're into things that are kind of supernatural and like obviously fictional, and just a good, fun, easy read. Like, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good story, and it kept me sucked in, I'll give it that. I kept going back to it, so definitely check that out if you're into series types of books. Alright, getting back to the books that were on my original list, my next book was True Love, A Practice for Awakening the Heart. And this is another one of those books that's just a spiritual guide type of book. I'm not like a super religious person, I'm more of a spiritual person. I want to feel peace in my heart, in my soul, and as one with nature. I don't know. Is that even worded properly? Probably not. But this book teaches you the Buddhist foundations of true love, and it's one of those things that stuck with me enough that like I considered getting them tattooed on me. Like, it's just, they're good, solid foundations to remember, and to remind yourself that loving another human doesn't mean you own them. It means that you accept them for who they are, at every point of who they are, and you just allow them to exist and be themselves, and you see that and you accept that, and you make your choice of if you're going to love that human or not. And personally, I love that outlook. Maybe I'm a little Buddhist at heart, I don't know. Only time will tell. My next book was #GirlBoss, and I've watched the TV show on Netflix. If you haven't, you totally should. But you should also read the book, because it's just one of those books that like shows you how you can very easily, I guess not easily, it's a bad term, but it shows you how you can literally just take your dream and your goal and take off running with it and make something absolutely insane happen for your life. Sophia talks about just how she managed to make her business go from just an interest in vintage clothing into something making her like crazy amounts of money today, to where she doesn't have to worry about much of anything. But it's a really good read, especially if you're an entrepreneur or just kind of wondering how all of that works for these people that always claim that they came from nothing. It's a good book to read. She will tell you exactly how it happened, and she doesn't care. She's not gonna cut corners for you and make it sound all sweet and like, yeah, I just worked really hard. Like, she's gonna tell you all of the rough parts of it, and it's the way you gotta do it. At the time of filming this, I've also read through the first 4 Harry Potter books, Sorcerer's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban, and Goblet of Fire, and I am currently in the middle of reading Order of the Phoenix. I've read all of these books before. It was nothing new to me, so I don't have a whole lot to say about them. If you've read Harry Potter, you either like it or you don't. If you haven't read Harry Potter, you should check it out. Even if you're 26, it's still a good read. And yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say on that. I will tell you guys that my goal was to read the whole series this year. Don't think I'm going to accomplish that, but I'll finish it next year, that's fine. And that I was reminded very early on that my favorite book is for sure Prisoner of Azkaban. I'm also rewatching the movies as I read the books, and unfortunately that is not my favorite movie, but it's okay, it happens. Still my favorite book. The next book on my list is actually like a 2-for-1, because it shows up in the same thing under like my library. It's Animal Farm and 1984 by George Orwell. They just combined the 2 books into one book. Obviously not one story, it's just one, first half is one book, second half is the other book. Anyway, you get the point. Anyway, I had this on my reading list and I forgot that I had actually read it before in high school. I forgot. Well, I had read 1984 in high school. I'd never read Animal Farm, and it was a really good read. And if you haven't checked it out, it is a classic and you should totally check it out, because it just gives you a lot of insight on the world and the way that corporations run, government runs, all sorts of things. And yeah, it's just one of those books that everybody should check out. So, do it. Next on my list is You're a Badass, and I can't suggest this book enough. It's wonderful, and it will make you feel like you're a badass because it reminds you of all the parts of you that are super cool, and you should go read it. If you need that little pick-me-up, it'll do it. Just go read it. I promise. Promise. The next book on my list falls under that same category. It is Girl Code, and after reading this book, I actually started listening to her podcast, and I like live for this podcast. I have caught up on everything that I missed, and I just like listen to the next one as soon as I possibly can, and it just like, it revives a part of me that just makes me feel okay and like I'm on the right path and I can do this, and she's very inspirational. And go check out the book, check out any of her books, check out her podcast. Just trust me. Trust me, okay? This next book I actually just kind of found randomly in my library's online database, and it is I Met the Walrus One Day with John Lennon. I absolutely love John Lennon. I think he was just a beautiful soul, and he had a good outlook on the world, and he just wanted to make the world a better place, and it was cool to read this story about him from the viewpoint of this person that just loved him as a child and made it a goal to meet him, and he went all out to meet John Lennon and talk to John Lennon, and he had no credentials for anything. He had no real right to be there. He just made it happen. And first off, if that's not inspiring, I don't know what is. But it's also just really cool to read about how John Lennon interacted with people that were just like you and me. So if you like John Lennon, check that book out. Alright, the next book on my list is Leave Your Mark, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I don't remember much about this book. Like, I gave it a good rating, so apparently I liked it, but right now, sitting down in front of you, I don't remember much about it. So maybe I just need to go reread it. Maybe it's just one of those books that you read once and check it off your list. I don't know. Obviously, past Sam would have suggested it, so take it or leave it. The next book on my list is Brave New World. This was not one on my initial list. It was actually suggested to me by someone, so I figured I would try it out because it was available in my library's book selection online. That's kind of why I went off my list a lot, is because they were just books that were already available for me without costing anything extra, so I went with them. But I mean, it's a classic, I guess. I've heard a lot about it, but it wasn't my favorite book by far. So, I mean, if you like classic literature, go give it a read. If it's not really your thing, I would pass on this one because it wasn't anything that struck me as everybody needs to read this. So, the next book on my list is called Street Gang, and it is about the history of children's television, children's educational television, to be exact. You're not gonna find like SpongeBob in here, but it focuses a lot on like Sesame Street and how that came to be a thing. I picked this book up because I absolutely love Jim Henson. He was so incredibly talented, and I love him. I love reading things about him, and I just think he was a really cool person. So I picked this book up for that. There was a lot about Jim Henson in it, but not as much as I hoped for. It focused a lot on like the other shows prior to Sesame Street, and it also jumped around a lot. So if you don't mind books that jump around a lot and you like to find out the history of things like that, then pick it up. But for me, it's not something I would reread just because I didn't like how much it jumped around. It made it really difficult for me to figure out what was going on. Right, the next book I read was You Are a Badass at Making Money. This is by the same author as You Are a Badass, obviously. But I liked this book. I didn't like it as much as the initial one. It just focused more on making money. And I think I just kind of prefer the book before it that was more about reminding you that you're awesome just the way you are. So I don't know, if you want to read one and read the other, you don't need one to read the other, but if you just want to pick up one of them, I would definitely suggest the original You Are a Badass, but the other one was fine. It was good too, but I definitely prefer the original. The next book on my list is I Thought It Was Just Me, And this book was really interesting. It took me a while to get through, but it's all about shame and women. And like, it was just this huge shame study involving women. Like, it focused on women. There was a little bit at the end that focused on men, but she mainly studied women and shame. And it was just really interesting because shame was never something I had really thought about for myself. So, sorry, there was a plane outside. And it was one of those things I'd never really thought of. I always just thought of like guilt and embarrassment, and she kind of lays out the difference between guilt and shame and all that stuff. And it was just a really interesting thing to read about and kind of look inside yourself and see how you've been affected by those things and how you can no longer be affected by those things. It's good lessons to know in life. The second to last book on my list is the Hannah Hart biography called Buffering. It's her Unshared Tales book, and I like reading books by other YouTubers. I think it's cool to see where other people came from and how they got to where they are now. And this one was a little heartbreaking because you find out just what she went through as a child, and it was rough. And it's amazing that she is where she is now, but she doesn't act like she came by it easily. She lets you know that it was rough and that it's still rough, and she's just still recovering from a lot of things. And if you like reading biographies about people that are right here that you can relate to right now very easily, I would definitely pick it up. And the last book on my list is the one that I'm still currently reading, and it is A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. This book walked into my front door with a bunch of other books, and I figured it's here and it's available and I don't have to pay for it, so why not pick it up and read it. I'm only on page 52 at the time of filming this, and I'm already in love with this book. It's a little bit of a slow read just because there's a lot to take in and absorb, but it's a really great book, and it definitely makes you rethink the way that you view the world and yourself and life in general. So again, if you like philosophical, spiritual books, pick it up. It's gonna be a good one, I can already tell. So that is it for this video of my initial list. 13 of the books that I read this year were on it, so not too bad. The other ones, maybe I'll roll them over, maybe I'll just relook at them and decide if I actually want to read them or not. Who knows? We'll find out next month when I come out with my 2019 books I want to read list, right? Anyway, that's it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to my channel already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you have read any of these books, leave me a comment down below letting me know and letting me know what you thought of them. And if you haven't read any of these books, or you know some other books that I should check out next year, leave me a comment with that too. Yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye!